It was just supposed to be a quick flight, a simple trip back home for Thanksgiving. But for 19-year-old Sophie Hayes, that seat 1-A in first class was about to change everything. She didn't mean to sit there. She didn't even know it was first class. She was nervous, juggling a ragged duffel bag, her broken phone barely working to display the boarding pass. Her thrift store boots squeaked against the pristine flooring of the jet bridge. When the flight attendant scanned her pass, there was a beep. She was waved through. So she followed the other passengers, turned left instead of right, sat down in the first window seat she saw. To her, it was just a seat. She tucked herself in, clutching her bag like it might vanish if she let go. No one said anything. Yet, the champagne didn't arrive, but the glares did. Sophie tried to ignore the icy stares from the suited man across the aisle. The well-manicured woman rose ahead, whispering something to the attendant. Then he walked in, tall, sharp, silent. A man who looked like money, power, and secrets all rolled into one. His suit alone could have paid Sophie's tuition for a year, and he was looking at her seat. Then he smiled. "I believe you're in my seat," he said smoothly, but his voice wasn't angry, just amused. Sophie jumped up, flustered, her voice cracking. I'm sorry. I must have, oh God. I think I sat in the wrong." But the man held up his hand. "No need. I'll take hers." And just like that, the billionaire sat beside her. The whispers began, a first-class buzz. Someone had recognized him, Oliver Grant, youngest tech mogul to hit the Forbes list in over a decade, worth over $4 billion. And he just offered to switch seats, to sit next to a girl in a $9 hoodie. Sophie's hands trembled as she clutched her seatbelt. Why hadn't they asked her to move yet? Surely the flight attendant would come, but they did in single quotes T. Instead, Oliver Grant leaned in, whispering with a grin, "Don't worry. I made sure you stay right where you are." Sophie blinked, heart racing. "Why would you?" He shrugged. "Because I want to see how this story ends." And just like that, the flight took off with Sophie still in first class and the whole cabin watching. But what she didn't know, this wasn't going to be a flight. It was going to be a test. And Oliver Grant was about to rewrite her entire life. Because by the time they landed, Sophie wouldn't just be a poor girl sitting in first class, she'd be a headline. The engines hummed beneath them, steady like a heartbeat. Sophie stared at the clouds, willing herself to disappear. This couldn't be real. She'd sat in the wrong seat. That alone should have gotten her kicked back to coach, if not off the flight entirely. But now she was next to Oliver Grant. That Oliver Grant. She kept her eyes forward, but every part of her felt seen. Across the aisle, someone was recording. A teenage girl whispered, "That's her, the girl who stole a first-class seat, and he's letting her stay." Sophie's ears burned. Meanwhile, Oliver relaxed into his seat like he owned the skies, sipping his water with a smirk. "So, Sophie Hayes, where are you headed?" She froze. "How do you know my name?" He tilted his phone toward her. Her Facebook profile was on screen. "Weak passwords are dangerous." Her jaw dropped. "You hacked me. Technically, your public Wi-Fi did most of the work. I just walked through the door you left wide open." Sophie tightened her hoodie, like it could protect her. I didn't ask you to sit in my seat, either," he said with a wink. It was infuriating. And yet, he wasn't wrong. He went back to typing on his phone, unbothered. Sophie watched him from the corner of her eye. His fingers moved fast, confident, like they were used to building things, apps, empires, reputations. She tried not to care. She had a layover in Chicago, a final bus ride home. This was just a weird detour on her already messed up journey. But then, cancel that layover, he said suddenly. "What?" He didn't look up. "There won't be one. You're flying. Direct. I didn't pay for that." She STAMMERED. He finally looked at her. "I did." Her stomach dropped. "Why are you doing this?" Oliver leaned back. "Because I can." He wasn't flirting. He wasn't smiling anymore either. There was something in his voice, something heavy. The attendants treated him like royalty. Even the pilot peeked out to say hello. But Sophie, she saw something else. Loneliness. He asked about her major, English, her favorite book, The Giver, her hometown small, broke, and proud. She kept it short, unsure how much to reveal. But Oliver listened like every word was currency. And then he told her something strange. "My father sat in this seat once. First time he ever flew first class. Said he felt like an imposter. Never shook that feeling." She blinked. "Your Fathered the guy who built half of Silicon Valley. He nodded. Even he didn't believe he belonged. Sophie was silent. Until now, first class had felt like a mistake. But suddenly, it felt like a metaphor, just as she found her voice. The real ticket holder of seat 128 boarded the plane late, and everything stopped. "Excuse me, that's my seat." The voice sliced through the cabin like a blade. Sophie turned. Hard hammering, a sharply dressed woman stood in the aisle, clutching a Louis Vuitton tote and glaring down at her like she was something stuck to the bottom of her heel. Seat 1A, her seat. Sophie's mistake was finally catching up. Sophie scrambled. I didn't mean to." The woman turned to the flight attendant. "Why is this girl in my seat?" "I paid extra. That seat was guaranteed." The attendant hesitated. "Ms. DeFore, I understand, but remove her," the woman snapped. Immediately, Sophie's throat closed. She grabbed her bag, eyes watering. "I'll go. I didn't mean to cause." But Oliver raised his hand. "Slow and deliberate. She stays." He said, "Ms. DeFore blinked. "Excuse me, she's my guest." "That's allowed, isn't it?" The attendant froze. "Technically, yes. Mr. Grant, if you're offering her your seat." "I am." Oliver turned to Sophie. "You're not moving." The cabin watched. Stunned. "Ms. DeFore's face turned red. "This is outrageous. I'll be reporting this." Oliver didn't even blink. "Be my guest. And when you do, tell them Oliver Grant personally asked the airline to refund your ticket, fully, and upgrade you on your next flight." She sputtered. You can't." He pulled out his phone. "Already done." The woman stood frozen, jaw clenched. Then with an angry huff she turned and stormed to another seat offered by the staff. Sophie's entire body was trembling. Oliver leaned toward her, voice low. "You okay?" She shook her head. "Why did you do that?" He shrugged. "I don't like bullies. Besides, I told you I want to see how this story ends." But Sophie knew this wasn't normal. Rich people didn't just defend poor girls on airplanes, not without wanting something. "Are you filming this?" she whispered. "Is this some viral stunt?" "No." "Then what is it?" He looked her in the eyes. "You're the first person in months who didn't pretend to know me, didn't ask for anything. You look scared, not starstruck. So maybe I needed to sit next to someone real." Sophie didn't know what to say. The plane rumbled beneath them, slicing through the clouds. She stared out the window, her heart still racing. The rest of the flight went quietly, sort of. People kept whispering. Phones kept recording. Sophie knew this moment, this bizarre, terrifying, surreal moment was probably already trending online. But when Oliver spoke again, his voice was soft, almost human. "You don't belong back there," he said, nodding. "Toward economy, you belong here." She scoffed. "I work at a diner. I make $6.25 an hour and eat leftover fries for lunch." "That's not who you are," he said. "It's just where you are." Sophie looked at him then, not as a billionaire, but as something more complicated. A man with too much money and a little connection. Someone who wore his loneliness like a custom-made suit. She didn't know what was happening between them, but it felt like the start of something. And when they landed in Chicago, Sophie expected to vanish back into her ordinary life. Instead, Oliver made an offer that turned her world upside down. The landing gear touched down with a soft thud. The flight was over, but Sophie's world, it was just beginning to tilt. Passengers began gathering their things, standing in line like nothing unusual had happened. But for Sophie, nothing felt the same. She stayed seated, unsure what to do until Oliver placed his phone in his pocket, turned to her, and asked a question that made her stomach drop. "What are you doing tomorrow?" She blinked. "Tomorrow? Yeah, tomorrow afternoon. Specifically, I have to catch a bus back to Greenfield. I'd have work in the morning." He nodded slowly. "So, you're still working that double shift at that diner off Route 9. Her jaw fell open. "How do you know that?" "I didn't," he said. "But thanks for confirming." Sophie glared. "Seriously, you're stalking me now?" He smiled. "I'm observing. Well, observe that some of us don't have time to play billionaire games. I have bills. Rent. A manager who docks my pay if I'm late." Oliver stood up and grabbed his carry-on, then paused. "Skip the bus." "What?" He leaned in, close enough that she could smell the cedar cologne clinging to his collar. "Come to the Grant Foundation Gala tomorrow. Black tie. Be my guest." Sophie laughed loudly. "You want me to go to some charity ball? In what? My diner uniform?" I'll take care of that. I'm not some project you can show off like a rescue dog. Oliver's jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. It's not like that, really, because it feels a lot like pity wrapped in diamonds. He looked her in the eye, dead serious now. It's not pity. It's curiosity. About what? About who you are when no one's expecting anything from you. When the world isn't watching. She stared at him, heart racing. She didn't know if she wanted to run or scream or cry or say yes. She hadn't been invited to anything important in years. The last time someone gave her a gift, it was a leftover milkshake from a coworker who quit the next day. And now this man, this billionaire, was asking her to walk into a ballroom full of sharks. Why? Before she could answer, he pressed something into her palm, a small envelope, with a card inside. His number, a car service confirmation, a room booked in her name at the Park Meridian Hotel. I'm not asking you to impress anyone, he said, just to show up for you. She looked at the card, then at him. This is insane, she whispered. Oliver smiled, stepping away. The best stories usually are. Then he was gone, and Sophie stood in the middle of the first-class cabin, holding an invitation to a world she never imagined she'd enter. But when she arrived at the hotel, the dress waiting for her wasn't just designer. It was custom-made with a note that would leave her frozen in place. The Park Meridian smelled like money, not the crumpled kind Sophie was used to digging out of her apron at the end of a shift, but the kind that whispered through velvet drapes and marble floors. She stood in the lobby like she didn't belong, because truthfully, she didn't. The concierge greeted her by name, Miss Hayes. We've been expecting you, Suite 1803, Suite. She rode the elevator alone. Her heart felt like it was galloping. The doors opened to a hallway so quiet it felt sacred. Room 1803 welcomed her with a gold key card and a sense of dread. And then inside she saw it, the dress. It was laid out across the king-size bed like a dream waiting to be worn. Soft champagne silk, backless, delicate straps, stitching so precise it didn't look sewn, it looked sculpted. Next to it, a black velvet box. Inside, a necklace, real diamonds, the kind that made her hands shake just holding them. But what really knocked the air out of her lungs was the no dot written in looping, steady handwriting, no logo, no signature. Just this. Wear this if you're ready to stop hiding. No name, but she knew who it was from. She sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the dress like it might burn her. Why? Was he doing this? Why her? She looked in the mirror. Same girl, same freckles, same crooked tooth and scar on her lip from a bike crash in 5th grade. No fairy godmother had waved a wand. No magical transformation. But this felt like a choice. To show up, to stop, apologizing for being visible. So she stood, slipped the dress on, pinned up her hair with trembling fingers, and for the first time in years, Sophie Hayes saw herself not as a waitress, but as a woman walking into a room she was never supposed to be in and owning it. The gala was held at the Riverside Conservatory, chandeliers, orchestras, security everywhere. As her car pulled up, she expected someone to stop her, but instead people turned to look, and then they stared. Cameras flashed. Guests murmured. A few jaws literally dropped, because Sophie Hayes looked like a secret someone had just discovered. Then she saw him. Oliver standing near the bar, in a tailor tux, watching her, but not with the smugness of before. No, this was different. He looked stunned. Like she was the billionaire. He walked to her slowly, letting every eye in the ballroom witness it. You came, he said. She lifted her chin. You left me no choice. He chuckled. That dress was made for you. No, she said. I was made for me. That made him pause, and then smile. But before they could speak further, a woman stormed across the room, grabbing Oliver's arm. Oliver, we need to talk. Now, blonde, tall, sharp heels and sharper eyes. Sophie froze. The woman turned to her. And who is this? Oliver didn't blink. This is Sophie Hayes. The woman scoffed. Of course it is. Sophie's chest tightened, because suddenly she wasn't the guest anymore. She was the problem. And what Sophie didn't know, that woman Chloe Monroe wasn't just a jealous ex. She was the heiress to Oliver's biggest rival, and she had a plan to make Sophie disappear. Chloe Monroe, daughter of Ethan Monroe, media tycoon, billion-dollar legacy, and the man who once tried to buy out Oliver Grant's company in a hostile takeover. This wasn't just some ex. This was war and heels. Sophie felt the weight of every stare in the ballroom shift as Chloe's icy glare locked onto her. Oh, Oliver, Chloe purred, still collecting strays off the street. Sophie's fist clenched, but Oliver's jaw tightened first. That's enough, Chloe. She tilted her head. No, really, I'm just curious. Where did you find this one? Was she working valet, or maybe selling Girl Scout cookies outside? Sophie took a breath. Actually, I was working double shifts at Rosie's Diner, but thanks for asking. Chloe blinked, caught off guard by the sarcasm. Oliver cracked a smile. She's quick, isn't she? But Chloe wasn't done. This is your game now. Dressing them up, bringing them here like pets. Is this some twisted version of charity? Sophie turned to Oliver. You should probably handle this. I am, he said calmly. By not giving her what she wants. Chloe's expression flickered for the briefest second, then turned venomous. Fine, but don't say I didn't warn you. She doesn't belong here, Oliver, and you're too smart to pretend otherwise. With that, Chloe pivoted and disappeared into the crowd, leaving behind a silence that felt radioactive. Sophie stared down at her shoes. She's not wrong. Oliver tilted his head. About what? I don't belong here. I'm wearing a dress I didn't buy, staying in a hotel I can't afford, and I still smell like fryer grease no matter how many times I shower. He didn't laugh, didn't deflect. Instead, he said, and yet, you handled her better than most CEOs. No. Sophie looked up. She'll try something, she whispered. Of course she will, he replied. But so will you? The question is, which one of you walks away smarter? She hesitated. What is this to you? An experiment? He took a long breath. At first, maybe, but not anymore. Before Sophie could ask what that meant, a waiter approached. Miss Hayes, there's someone asking for you at the bar. Says you used to work with him. Sophie blinked. What? The waiter nodded. He said it's urgent. She followed, confused, heart-pounding. When she reached the bar, her world tilted again. There, in a rumpled suit and tired eyes, stood Danny, her ex-boyfriend, the one who left her the night her mother got sick, the one who took her savings and vanished without goodbye. Now he was here, at this party. She froze. Danny. He smiled sheepishly. Hey, Soph, what the hell are you doing here? I was invited, he said, by Chloe. And before Sophie could even process that, Danny leaned in and whispered, she's going to ruin you unless you leave tonight. Danny's breath still smelled like peppermint gum and cheap regret. Sophie took a step back, as if his presence alone could contaminate the night. You were invited, she said, arms folded tight. By Chloe. He nodded, eyes darting around, like a rat in a glass maze. She said I could get a free dinner, maybe a job lead. I didn't know you were here. Double quotes liar. Sophie clenched her fists. She knew you'd mess with me. Danny looked uncomfortable. She offered me $5,000 to show up and talk. He lowered his voice. She said you're a liability to Oliver, that this thing between you, whatever it is bad for him, bad for his image. Sophie felt her stomach twist. She wants me gone. Danny didn't answer. He didn't need to. She stared at the golden chandelier above them, the way it reflected off the champagne glasses, off her borrowed necklace, off the version of herself she barely recognized anymore. This night wasn't about transformation. It was about testing. Danny reached into his jacket, pulling out a flash drive. She gave me this, said if I didn't deliver it to Oliver tonight, I wouldn't get paid. Sophie's eyes narrowed. What's on it? He hesitated. Stuff from your past. What past? Medical debt, eviction records, your mom's mental health file, the restraining order. Sophie's face went cold. That was against my stepfather, not me. I know, Danny said, but twisted right. It'll look like you're unstable, like you're using him. Her throat tightened. And you were just gonna hand it over? Danny sighed. I need the money, Soph, but I didn't give it to her yet. I'm giving it to you. He held the flash drive out. She stared at it. This was more than sabotage. It was a smear campaign, a corporate power play disguised as gossip. Sophie snatched the drive and walked away. Oliver found her in a quiet corner of the rooftop terrace, city lights blinking beneath them. You okay? He asked. No, she said, but I'm awake. He saw the flash drive. What's that? She handed it over, a gift from Chloe, delivered by a ghost from my past. Oliver plugged it into his phone, scanning the contents. He didn't flinch. After a moment, he looked up. I've already seen all of this, She blinked. What? My team ran a background check the minute you didn't move out of that seat. She stared at him. He rising. You what? He nodded. Standard protocol. For anyone who gets too close. She took a step back. So all this, the kindness, the dress, the gala, it was all under surveillance. No, he said. Firm now. It started that way, but it didn't stay that way. She felt tears sting the corners of her eyes. He reached for her hand. I saw the file, yes, but I also saw how you kept going. I saw you work 3 jobs to support your mom. I saw you donate blood to afford her meds. I saw someone stronger than most people I know. Sophie was quiet. Then why let Chloe do this? Why invite me at all if she was going to attack? Me? Oliver exhaled. Because I needed to know if you'd run, and if I had. He looked at her. Then I would have let you, but Sophie wasn't going to run. Not anymore. Because tomorrow morning, she'd walk into Oliver's boardroom and confront the woman trying to erase her. 8 a.m. sharp. The Grant Industries tower pierced the Manhattan skyline like a sword made of glass and silence. Sophie had never been inside a building where the air felt this expensive. Everything gleamed. Polished marble floors, chrome elevators that whispered shut, smells of espresso and ambition. She clutched her jacket tighter, just a plain thrifted coat over the silk gown. She'd returned hours earlier. No makeup, no jewelry, no mask, but her back was straight. Oliver had told her she didn't have to come, but she told him, I'm done being someone people move around. I want a seat at the table even if I have to bring my own chair. And now here she was. The boardroom stretched out before her, glass walls, leather seats. 12 people in tailored suits and 1 shark in lipstick. Chloe Monroe sat at the end, legs crossed, fingers steepled like a villain in a legal drama. She smiled when Sophie entered. How bold. I didn't think you'd show. Sophie ignored her. Looked straight at Oliver, seated the chairs from Chloe, silent but watching. I won't take long, Sophie said. She stepped to the center of the room, her voice steady even as her heart tried to beat its way out. I know I don't look like I belong here, but I also know what it feels like to be treated like a seat filler in someone else's story. Like you're only worth what people expect of you. She looked around the room. I've cleaned motel toilets, waited tables for people who couldn't look me in the eye. I've walked through stores afraid of being followed, and I've eaten dinner counting quarters. Silence. But yesterday, someone told me I was more than that, and I believed him. For once, I believed I didn't have to apologize for existing. Chloe chuckled. How touching. Is this the part where you cry? No, Sophie said. This is the part where I tell you I'm not leaving. Chloe stood up. Oliver, this is absurd. You're letting a waitress lecture your board. I'm letting someone with nothing to gain speak truth, he said, which is more than I can say for you. Chloe's smile dropped. Oliver stood. You tried to blackmail her. You weaponized private records. And you brought her ex here to humiliate her. That's not strategy, Chloe. That's fear. The boardroom shifted. People glanced at each other. Chloe tried to recover. This is emotional manipulation. She doesn't belong at this level. Oliver nodded. Maybe not. But she didn't lie. She didn't cheat. And she didn't threaten to leak internal data to my father's enemies. Everyone froze. Chloe blinked. What did you just say? He placed a folder on the table. That's your NDA. Terminated. Legal's waiting. In the hall. She went pale. You're firing me. No, he said. You're removing yourself. Because you thought this was your game. But you underestimated the girl in seat 1A. Sophie turned to Chloe. You were right. I didn't belong here. But neither do you. Chloe grabbed her things and stormed out, heels clicking like thunder. The room was silent. Then someone, an older board member, cleared his throat. Miss Hayes, that was one hell of a speech. She smiled softly. Thanks. I practiced it on the subway. But just when Sophie thought it was over, Oliver made a decision that caught everyone off guard, and it involved offering her a job. Sophie stood there, heart still thudding, pulse hot in her ears. She expected applause or confusion, or someone to escort her out politely. But what she didn't expect was Oliver clearing his throat and saying, I want her. Hired. Silence. Sophie blinked. Wait, what? Oliver looked at the board. Effective immediately, junior strategy analyst. Starting salary, $90,000. Full health, remote optional. Training with my personal advisor. Her mouth dropped open. Oliver, what are you doing? He smiled slightly. You said you wanted a seat at the table. So here it is." A tall board member raised an eyebrow. "She doesn't have a degree or credentials. We can't just—" Oliver interrupted. "She has something more valuable: clarity, guts, the ability to spot what people miss because they're too educated to see it." Another voice chimed in, an older woman near the end of the table. "She did just stare down Chloe Monroe. That's impressive." Laughter rippled across the room. Sophie still hadn't moved. "Oliver, I wait tables. I don't know the first thing about corporate strategy. You know how people think," he said. "And I've got rooms full of data analysts who never had to fight to keep their lights on. I want someone who knows what real stakes feel like." She stared at him. "Why are you doing this?" He looked at her, steady, calm, not amused. "Any more real, because I've had a dozen consultants tell me how to reconnect with the public, but none of them ever asked a waitress what she thought. And maybe that's the problem." She swallowed hard. "I don't want pity, and I'm not offering any. I'm offering a job." He slid a small folder across the table. "Contract, offer letter, everything real." She stared at it like it might bite. Then she looked at him, the man who, days ago, watched her sit in the wrong seat and said, "Let her stay." Now, he was saying, "Let her rise." "I need time," she said. Oliver nodded. "Take it." She grabbed the folder, walked out slowly, head spinning. She didn't return to the hotel. She rode the subway all the way to the edge of the city, ending up in a small park overlooking the water. Kids ran past. A street musician played a sad saxophone solo. She sat on a bench, clutching the folder like a lifeline. $90,000. That was 3 years of rent, her mom's medication, her chance to finally study writing full-time. But it was also everything foreign. Sophie had always been background noise in other people's stories. Now she was being handed a pen. She was still sitting there when her phone buzzed. A message from Oliver. "Say yes. Not for me, for you." She stared at it. Then she hit reply. Type one word. "Okay." The next morning, Sophie Hayes entered Grant Tower again, but this time not as a guest. As staff. Security handed her a badge. People held elevators for her. One even smiled. She was still adjusting when Oliver found her in the executive lounge, sipping a coffee too fancy to pronounce. He sat beside her. "Welcome aboard." She looked at him. No gala, no dress, no stunt. He smirked. Just Monday morning. But just when she thought the drama was behind her, an anonymous message landed in her inbox. "He's not who you think he is. Be careful." The subject line read, "You deserve the truth." No sender, no name, no signature. Just a plain email in her inbox. That shouldn't have even existed, yet she hadn't shared her work email with anyone. Sophie hesitated, then clicked it open. Inside, a single sentence. "Oliver's father didn't die, he paid him off." And below it, a file attachment labeled gr_settlement_confidential.pdf. She didn't open it. Not right away. Her hands trembled as she closed the laptop. For the last 2 days, she'd been living in a whirlwind of opportunity, tension, and wild, impossible grace. But now reality returned like a punch to the ribs. She walked the halls of Grant Tower differently that morning. Watched how people whispered when she passed. Watched how Oliver's door remained closed for over an hour. Something wasn't right. That night, in her hotel room, she finally clicked the file. It wasn't just a settlement. It was a contract. A non-disclosure agreement from 5 years ago signed between Oliver Grant and George Grant, his own father. Terms: $80 million transferred in untraceable foreign accounts. 0 public contact. Permanent removal from all Grant Industries operations. No disclosure of the cause, but the line that stuck in Sophie's mind. In exchange for this payment, George Grant agrees to vacate all claims and refrain from disclosing the circumstances surrounding the former CEO's resignation under coercion. Resignation under coercion. She reread the sentence 5 times. Oliver had told the world his father had died. Quietly, peacefully, but this wasn't death. This was exile. The next morning, Sophie walked into Oliver's office before he could greet her with his usual smirk. She tossed the file on his desk. "Tell me it's fake." Oliver stared at it, then up at her. He didn't look surprised. "I wondered when you'd see that," he said. Her heart dropped. "So it's real." He exhaled. "Yes, you lied. To everyone. I protected what I had to." "From what?" "Oliver." He stood, walked to the window. "From the man who tried to destroy me. She stepped closer. Your father. He wasn't just a business partner. He was a manipulator. He used his power to cover losses, forge deals in my name, gamble with employee pensions. Why not expose him? I tried, he said. But exposing him would have tanked the company, and the people who had nothing to do with it would have paid the price. So I made a deal. To buy his silence, to save everyone else. Sophie stared at him. And you lied about his death. Oliver finally turned, because the truth was uglier than fiction. They stood there, in heavy silence. Sophie's mind raced. He wasn't perfect, but he wasn't a villain, either. He was complicated, like her. She looked down at the file again. You didn't trust anyone with this, she said softly. No, one would have understood. I might. Oliver met her eyes. I know. She sat down across from him. You don't get to decide everything alone anymore. He smiled faintly, noted. But just when Sophie thought the shadows had cleared, she got a call from someone she never expected, Georgia Grant himself. Sophie didn't recognize the number. She almost let it go to voicemail until a voice on the line said, if you care about the man you're working for, meet me today. Her breath caught. Who is this? A pause, then. George Grant. His father. She froze. He told me you would lie, she said slowly. George's voice was cold, calculated. And I told him he'd regret underestimating people like you. Before she could respond, he added, I'll send a car. 1 hour. The line went dead. The meeting took place in a discreet cafe in the Upper West Side. No guards, no press, just a booth in the corner, and a man who looked like an Asian king forced off his throne. George R. Grant, hair silver, suit flawless, eyes like razors. He extended his hand. She didn't take it. I see he's trained you well, he said dryly. I didn't come for a fight, she replied. Just the truth. George folded his hands. He thinks you'll defend him. He always needs a protector. First it was the lawyers, then the PR firms. Now, you. She frowned. Why contact me? Because I knew the moment he hired you, he'd start letting his guard down. You're a distraction. A good one. Don't insult me. George smiled. I'm complimenting you. She leaned in. What happened between you two? George's face hardened. I built that empire from scratch. While he was still in prep school, I was signing billion-dollar deals. Then one day, my son decides the board needs ethical reform. You mean he caught you cooking the books? George raised an eyebrow. I made strategic moves to protect shareholders. He turned it into a morality play. Kicked me out like a traitor. Sophie narrowed her eyes. You took $80 million. I took what I was owed. She shook her head. So why show up now? Because he's weak, emotional, and you're the one person who could crack him. And that, Miss Hayes, makes you dangerous. Sophie stood. I'm not here to destroy him. George smiled. You don't have to. Just keep doing what you're doing. The fall will take care of itself. Back at Grant Tower, Sophie walked into Oliver's office without knocking. He looked up from his laptop. What happened? I met your father. Silence. And he thinks you're a child playing king. He thinks I'm the sword that'll cut you down. Oliver's expression didn't change, but his eyes did. Softer. Tired. Maybe he's right. He said quietly, no, he's not. She walked to the edge of the desk. But he is coming for you. He wants your company, your pride. Oliver stood slowly. Let him come. Sophie shook her head. You can't beat him alone. He looked at her. I'm not alone. That night, headlines exploded. George Grant sues son for fraud. Claims forced exile, billionaire family at war. Court date set for Grant vs. Grant. Who is Sophie Hayes? From diner to defendant. Sophie's face was on the news. The world was watching, and she had no idea what came next. The courtroom awaits. But before the trial begins, Sophie will uncover a letter from Oliver's late mother, and it will change everything they thought they knew. The envelope was old, worn edges, yellow paper, addressed in soft cursive. To Oliver, open only if he forgets who he is. Sophie found it buried in a file drawer, in Oliver's private archive and opened. It had been sealed for over 15 years. The handwriting matched the few photographs she'd seen. His mother's. She hesitated, then opened it. Inside, the ink had faded, but the words were alive. My dearest Oliver, if you're reading this, it means your father has tried to rewrite the past. He's brilliant and dangerous, and everything you fear he is because he's afraid of you. Afraid you'll lead with your heart. Afraid the world will love you not because of your power, but in spite of it. Don't lose that. Don't become him. Forgive when you can. And when the world tries to tell you you're not enough, remember, you were never just your father's son. You are mine, too, and that means you were born to rebuild. Love always, Mom. Sophie sat with the letter for a long time. Then she walked into the courtroom. The press was everywhere. Flashes, microphones. The who's who of Wall Street packed into rows like it was a movie premiere. George Grant sat like a man convinced the ending was already written. His lawyers filed injunctions, accusations, alleged mismanagement. But when Oliver took the stand, everything changed. He read the letter aloud, every word. The courtroom fell into a stunned silence. Then Sophie was called up. George's attorney tried to paint her as the unstable outsider, the unqualified girl from the diner. The mistaken first-class dot. Sophie leaned into the microphone. Yes, I sat in the wrong seat. Yes, I didn't belong there. But I stayed, not because I thought I was better, but because someone told me I could. She turned to the judge. That seat didn't change me, but it reminded me I had value before anyone else saw it. The courtroom murmured. George glared, but Oliver smiled. The ruling came 2 days later. George Grant denied. The court ruled in favor of Oliver, deeming the contract binding, and George's attempts at reclaiming power as malicious and personally motivated. The NDA was upheld, the settlement terms sealed, the legacy preserved. Sophie walked into her office the next morning, stunned to find a gold plaque on the door. Sophie Hayes, VP of Human Insight and Development. She blinked. You made that up. Oliver stood behind her. Every empire needs a new department. She turned. Is this still about pity? He stepped closer. No, this is about partnership. Sophie paused. Are we talking business? Oliver tilted his head. Not just business. Her eyes searched his. There was no smugness now, just sincerity. And then he did something she never expected. He asked, Can I take you to dinner? No cameras, no boardrooms, just us. She smiled. Only if I get to pick the seat. Sophie speaking at schools, sharing her story. Oliver launching a new grant program in her mother's name. The two of them laughing in a diner. Their diner, a small plaque near the entrance. She sat in the wrong seat and never got up again. What did you think of Sophie and Oliver's story? Share your thoughts in the comments. On a scale from 0 to 10, how would you rate this story? Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications to keep up with all our inspiring stories.